Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is Perky. If you somehow missed the first video, which was quite popular for some reason, Perky is a 1959 Plymouth taxi, basically a stripper Savoy model, although note, it does not say Savoy on it. Because it's a taxi, of course, it's a four-door sedan, designed to carry passengers around the city comfortably. There are other features that are special to a taxi too, like these grab handles, for example. Thanks to various comments and further research, I've learned a whole lot more about this car since I made the first video. For example, all of these factory taxis had a hole in the roof for the taxi light wiring, about 8 inches back from the middle of the windshield, and you can totally see where that hole was filled on this car in the right light. If I have a superpower, I'd like to think that it's learning. The ability to fully immerse myself in a fresh subject and learn everything there is to know about something in an almost obsessive manner, well, it served me quite well over the years. If you watched the first video, then you know that this car is slow, aggressively slow, like glacially slow. It takes forever to reach 40 miles an hour, and I don't think there's a long enough runway in the world to reach the 70 miles an hour the manufacturer said this Perkins swapped taxi would reach. This Perkins P4C engine was uprated from the agricultural version, commonly found in Massey Ferguson tractors and such, and was supposed to make almost 60 horsepower. Obviously, this would never be a powerhouse. Currently, it doesn't make that almost 60 horsepower, and I'd really like to solve that. For that reason, I've set about learning every single thing I can about this Perkins engine and about the CAV injection pump and governor. Thankfully, because these engines and pumps were so common in tractors for so long, not only do parts exist, information exists. I've already had this pneumatic governor apart. I'm going to take it apart again in a minute here and you can see what makes it tick. For now, I've put it back together for a very important test. Before we do that, I want to explain the basic operation of the CAV inline injection pump. If you spend a lot of time in Cummins world, as I do, then you're probably familiar with the Bosch P7100 injection pump. That is an inline mechanical diesel injection fuel pump. This is pretty similar to that. Essentially, there are 4 individual units here which send pressurized fuel through lines up to the injectors or atomizers on the engine. There's a camshaft here in the bottom which actuates these units. There's also a drive here for a mechanical lift pump. The CAV pump is interesting because it can actually be driven from either end. And you can take this cam out and flip it around to change the firing order. You can also change the firing order, if need be, by reorganizing the lines on the pump here. The important thing to understand here is that these are individual pumps. They are pressurizing fuel outward to go to the injectors. They draw their fuel in from a common feed through this section of the pump. The amount of fuel that is injected is controlled by a collar here, and that collar is moved by a control rod. You can't see the rod, but it runs through the back section of the pump here, and it has little teeth that actuate the different collars on these units. If you know marine and industrial engines and tractors, then you're probably familiar with what a governor does. Essentially, its job is to keep the engine RPM at a steady state. There are different types of governors. There are mechanical governors and there are pneumatic governors. That's what we have here, and this is something I knew absolutely nothing about before getting this car. Essentially, there's a big leather diaphragm in here, and on the back side of it, there is a spring. What the spring does is forces this thing to full rack. Then the diaphragm, through a vacuum signal, pulls it back away from full rack. This is the rack position used for starting, full fuel. Once the engine fires up, the governor is going to pull that back to a usable idle condition. Because of this pneumatic system, the only lever on this pump is the stop lever. And you can see what this does. It moves the rack into the full shutoff position. You can follow the movement of this section of the collar and the screw head there to see what's happening. So in this setup, that control rod is anchored to the diaphragm on this end. It is also affected by the movement of the stop lever. The only other thing affecting its movement outside of the governor is the stop screw. This is what I was messing with in the first video, trying to get the thing to smoke, which it wouldn't. I backed it way out like this, and you can see as that stop screw moves what the rack is doing. It can actually travel much, much farther than these are generally set. In the pneumatic governor manual, which I was very happy to find, it describes a test to find out if the diaphragm in your governor is any good. What you do is you hold the rack to the stop position with the lever, you plug off the connection that goes up to the throttle body venturi with your finger, and then you release the stop. What should happen is these stay in place until you release your finger. Notice they do move a little bit. That's the compression of the air in here, but they don't wander any further than that. they will stay put until I take my finger off. Let's see what happens on the injection pump on the engine when I perform this same test. There's the stop lever held. I'm plugging the hole, which is kind of hard with the line in the way. And now I'll release the stop lever. Oh dear. That holds almost no pressure at all. I don't know that that's the entire problem here, but I do know that I have a slightly better diaphragm on hand, and we might as well throw it on this thing and see if it helps. The main issue with this, reaching the rear lower hardware. It's darn near impossible. Also, every time I touch this thing, I look like this. Here's that diaphragm housing off. Note all of the oil. Note that stud in the center. It's attached to a spring. That is the idle auxiliary spring. Here's the main spring from the governor. This one's like collapsed partially, and it looks like it's been heated. Look at this. That's the spring I just took out. That's the spring from the other pump. Neither of these is particularly strong, but the taller one is definitely stronger. This spring is what sends this pump to full rack. It fights against the diaphragm and pushes the rack in that direction toward the limit screw. I'm thinking maybe this just wasn't getting it there. The balance between vacuum in the diaphragm and the spring is just totally off. Maybe they did this intentionally because of an issue with the diaphragm, I don't know. Maybe the springs were different between different applications. I don't know that either, but again, you can see this one's been heated and modified. Here we are back at the bench looking at the donor unit so I can show you how this works. This is the diaphragm, which I've already carefully removed from the housing, but you can see it's got a little tab that locates it. That's to keep this lined up with this stud coming off of the control rod inside. Now I've already taken the hardware off. It's this little pin, whatever you like to call those, and a washer, and then it slides right off of the shaft. And with that out, you can see the control rod where it runs through the housing. Here's a look at that control rod action with the diaphragm out of the way. Note, currently it's in the full fuel position. If we pull it out here, you can see it says stop, that direction. If we pull on the stop lever, that's exactly what it does. It drags it all the way out this end. Okay, a couple interesting things. The housing on the car is slightly different. It doesn't have the locating tab for the diaphragm. But more interesting than that, there's no pin in this one. Here are the two side by side. Obviously this is a newer one, and the pump on the car has been rebuilt. They're both leather, but this is way more pliable. Okay, here we have the diaphragm from the car, the weak spring from the car, but the housing from this pump. These are the parts I wouldn't want to be using. There it is in full stop. Here it is plugged. And look how fast it just wings right over. I carefully knocked down that aligning tab, and it does seem to fit into the housing this way, so that's good. I'm going to pop that on there, and this time I am going to install a washer and a pin. After much swearing and dropping the impossible screw at least once, I've got the diaphragm back on and tight, so let's try the same test again. We'll go to full stop, plug the hole. Uh-oh. I made it worse. Okay, I thought the impossible screw was tight. It was not tight. Good teachable moment, I guess. This test actually tests the diaphragm and the housing for leaks. So if the housing isn't tight, bad times ensue. One more time. Full stop, plug hole, release stop. Yeah, they're moving some, aren't they? I don't know if it's any better than when I started or not. All right, this is as tight as the screws could possibly be, and as you can see, the movement's pretty slow, but there is still leakage past that diaphragm. I don't love that, but I don't know. I think it's an improvement, and we've got that stronger spring in here, so let's see if it changes anything. Before it runs again, I do need to reinstall this inspection plate, also the cork gasket behind it. I've had this off a couple times now, and yeah, I kind of made it leak last time. I've done some other things off camera as well. I actually did give the injection timing a bump of like a couple degrees. This line was lined up here previously, and I've got it here. Apparently the previous owner had also given it a little bump, which is why that thing wasn't centered in its slot. This did make a small difference. I also reconfigured the alternator mounting slightly to try and kill the horrible squeal noises. It's, well, it's better, but I also need to change the belt again. Because I didn't explicitly say this is a later Chrysler alternator in the first video, a bunch of people told me that this is a later Chrysler alternator in the comments. Yeah, believe it or not, I know that. This thing should have had a generator on it most likely. There actually was an optional Lee Neville heavy-duty high-output alternator available on these 59 Plymouth taxis. I don't know if this car came with one. In any case, it didn't come with that voltage regulator. That's from the 60s. This original generator mounting bracket is now extra. We'll take that off at some point. I need to get a tube spacer between these parts of the alternator mounting setup. Starting aids. I did mention there's a heating element here in the intake. What this is actually supposed to do is heat an amount of fuel that is injected through this primer system. And that fuel is then supposed to be drawn into the cylinders and help aid in early starting combustion. I believe I did show this reservoir. Apparently what you ran in this was just regular diesel fuel. I believe this is known as Kai gas or something like that. I filled this thing this morning and I pumped the crap out of the thing to prime it. The pump in the dash did work and it did inject some fuel into the intake tract. It actually didn't help it start any faster, but it did billow smoke faster. That was cool. A little while later, I realized that the fuel was seeping out of the can. I noticed this previous repair, and I started to understand why it wasn't in use when I got the car. Later, I realized the little hand pump in the dash leaks too. Oh joy. I had countless comments saying I should change the fuel filter. Okay, done. This housing has a water separator bowl on the bottom. The fuel I can see in there looks really good. Haven't fixed the oil leak yet. Timing. This is a triple row roller timing chain. You can see here in the spare engine with the cover taken off. It's a pretty simple system. It drives the camshaft and then the oil pump, off of the back of which the injection pump is driven. This is the tensioner here. On this engine, the tensioner was not tensioning. There's a spring in here, but this thing was just kind of gummed up and it wouldn't move all the way over. I actually pried it over with a screwdriver and watched the chain come right up off of the case here where it was clearly riding for some time. You can see the rub marks in there. That's not ideal. I was thinking the same thing could be happening in the engine in the car, but I did rock the crank back and forth and noticed immediate movement in the drive to the injection pump. That tells me there cannot be much slack in there. In the future, timing chains do exist, and it wouldn't be too big of a deal to change that. Trying to keep the Perkins from leaking a drop of oil would be a completely fruitless endeavor. I did goop some silicone on this side plate cover and gasket to try and keep oil from spewing out here, because the injection pump is actually lubricated by engine oil. Inspection cover's back in, and the line to the governor is back on. Never start the engine without that. Bad stuff will happen. I have already had the car running today, so it should fire right up. Generally it does. It's just that first cold start in the morning that's a huge pain. That was weird. When you've actually driven it and it's fully warmed up, it generally starts better than that. Well, the throttle kind of seems more responsive. Okay, and this is weird. Usually the stop sequence takes a while. It's immediate now. Fixing things is great, but when you don't know how you fix them, that's kind of weird. All right, 41.5-inch belt turns out to be like perfect. I've even got a little bit more to go on this when it inevitably stretches. Well, it sounds pretty happy. Let's take this thing for a rip. Much has been said about the vibration of the small Perkins engine. Perhaps more should be said because it's quite bad. All right, it's not that bad, but it is slowly shaking itself and the car to pieces. I really do like the way this thing steers. It's not bad. And you know what? I'll say something else controversial. The stock drum brakes are pretty good. It's probably because they're the total contact type, not the later Bendix brakes. I might be a little greasy. I did wipe my hands off, but it didn't do much. Of all the jobs to actually wear gloves on, this would probably be a good one. Well, I don't know if it's any faster. 20. 30. I don't know if it's actually any better. It's probably all in my head. But it does seem to be running a little nicer. I should mention I also dumped some diesel clean in the tank. And I also put in some of that Lucas cylinder, lubricant, injector, cleaner, fuel system treatment stuff. Maybe that'll do something, maybe not. That is the top of second at 35. Okay, did eke out an extra couple miles an hour there compared to the previous best. That's kind of hunting for an idle now. I think that is going to be down to the adjustment on the auxiliary idle spring in there. I'll tweak that when I get back to the shop. Anyway, does it still shut off nice? It's better than it was, but it's also not quite fully warm. I feel at this point I need to discuss my goals for this car. I've had a whole lot of comments, and I would say the vast majority of them are on the same page that I am. This car is something very special. This car is something that does not exist. I made a joke toward the end of the last video about putting a Hemi in here. I am not going to do that. It is of the utmost importance to me and to everyone else that has an interest in this diesel-powered Plymouth that it stays that way. It needs to stay just as it is. Now, when I say just as it is, I would like this car to be drivable in traffic. I have been daily driving it for the last 4 or 5 days, and I enjoy it, but there's so much planning that goes into driving this car because you have zero power, and the only way to drive it is with your foot in the firewall at all times. American Diesel Corp, or whatever the heck they were called, claimed this thing would be able to do 70 miles an hour. I promise you that is not true, at least in its current state. All I want to be able to do is drive and enjoy this thing, take it to car shows, and cruise it on the highway here and there. If I can coax all 58 horsepower this Perkins P4C is supposed to have out of the stable, well, I'd be relatively happy with that. But ultimately, I think we might have to shoot a bit higher. A humongous percentage of the comments on the first video said, turbo? Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, there's plenty of room for it. It would be an easy modification. We don't have to mess with the engine itself, to much of a degree anyway. We don't have to cut any holes in the car, at least if we run non-intercooled. We could slap a turbo right here with some kind of adapter off the stock manifold. This would require some modifications to the fueling system. Well, as you can see, I'm already like waist deep in figuring out how all of that works. This original exhaust system is kind of terrible, particularly the flex pipe section back there offends my sensibilities. I'd probably save it and just fabricate a new front section. We're not there yet, but in the future, it is entirely possible a turbo finds its way onto this Perkins engine. If it does, it will be fully reversible. I would like this car to actually start. I'm considering some different options for that. My first idea is adapting a Cummins grid heater. I don't think that would be the hardest thing to do. Another idea would be adapting glow plugs to this engine. I don't know how difficult that would be. I will not be doing a Cummins swap. We're gonna keep Perkins power in here no matter what. If this one explodes, I've got a spare engine. And again, parts are available to fix these things. So that's my plan. Stock plus. Hopefully everybody understands and appreciates that. Okay, yeah, this adjustment was bottomed out all the way before, and I've now had to back it way out to get this thing back to a normal idle. Here's where it was. I think I'm gonna end up somewhere around here. The previous owner, Jason, had messed with that, and I'm sure it's been tweaked in the past. Now that we've got a diaphragm that actually works, it shouldn't have to be cranked up so much. All right, after making that idle adjustment, I decided to back the rack limit screw out again. 20. More than 30. All right, it's still slow, but that actually did make a difference. Oh yeah, there's our fuel smoke. So that tells me we're right on the bleeding edge or even a hair over maximum fueling. Tell you what, for now, I'm gonna leave the settings just as they are. I think we need to do a highway test next. Also fix the leak. Oh, in case you were wondering, I burned my hand on the manifold. Hey, should the gas tank be falling out? Just wondering. This coupler setup is absolutely stupid. Tighten these as far as they can go till this bolt touches this stud, and the tank still moves. But it moves less, at least. Every single time I get in this car, I feel like I'm forgetting something. It's always a seatbelt. Now to answer the question everyone's got on their mind. In its new perkier form, does Perky have enough torque for a camera flip? Let's find out. Wow, it does! The big important question on my mind is, can this thing manage highway speeds? You know, I'm accustomed to garnering attention in cars, but the attention in this is something else. Or storks. Yeah, you can really feel it just nose over the governor. It accelerates, and then it ceases accelerating. Oh yeah, cut me off. Good idea. Do I try to pass the semi or stay behind the semi? I think you know the answer to that. Okay, I think I could have passed the semi. I cannot believe this. But it's going 55! And it might even go slightly faster than that. Yes, getting there takes as long as you'd expect, but it is not as bad as I thought it would be. Heck, I'm not even the one impeding traffic. Oh, hell! The enemy of the Perkins Plymouth. It didn't do that bad. But you can hear it singing. I mean, I think 55 is just about the end of the world. I have a big road trip in mind for this car, and I don't know that driving 300 miles one direction with it singing like that the entire way is a great idea. I mean, diesels do like a load, but come on. You know what's amazing? This thing drives pretty nice, and it stops great, at least for what it is. Whee! Okay, a sway bar would be good. I really wish at this point that I had the overdrive transmission that the previous owner had in the trunk, because an overdrive for this would be huge. That would enable comfortable cruising at 60, 65, which again is all I would ever want. Now, as many people pointed out in the comments on the first video, this car was built for a 55 mile an hour world. I understand that. The thing I don't understand is the fact that the Perkins swap was advertised to be good for 70 miles an hour. Now, I don't know if the rear gearing is the original rear gearing or if maybe it's been changed, but it seems to favor pickup a little bit better than highway speed. That's where an overdrive would really come in handy. Anyway, off to the parts store again. I've been asked by at least one person why I didn't put classic registration on this car. I just used normal plates. Well, that's because I've been driving this thing every day, everywhere. I don't want to get in trouble. You know, I'd like to think that it's getting better the more I drive it, but actually, it's getting harder and harder to start for some reason. This took a really long time. Maybe I should use the ether the previous owner was using. I don't want to, though. Oh, come on. What a pain. Yeah, my 1959 Ford diesel tractor is actually easier to start than this thing. Today is the day. I'm going to drive this car like 100 miles, and so I wanted to check the fluids and such before I did that. Gear oil in the transmission's a big one. Well, there is some, and I know that because it's pouring out the back. This is really bad. I don't know what that is. Coolant? Rusty rainwater? No idea, but I don't like it. In the first video, I found all of the timing cover bolts were loose, and so I snugged those up. Yeah, I just snugged them again. You can see we've actually got silicone squeezing out now. Multiple parties said I should check this muffler for clogs. Yeah, I probably should, but exhaust does seem to come out the back, so hopefully it's fine. Ultimately, a new muffler is definitely in the plan. The rear end does not puke fluid everywhere, so I would like to check this. Glad I checked. The rear end did look oily inside, but it took almost an entire quart of 80/90 gear oil. Good Lord. Threw the rest of that quart of oil in the transmission. It's just gonna come right back out anyway. Happened to notice yesterday this thing sits super crooked. It's obviously low on the passenger side when it's sitting on level ground. That could be because the torsion bar adjuster on the passenger side is completely backed out. I'm gonna run it down and get it looking something like that one does. Maybe not exactly the same, but that's gotta make an improvement. That can mess up the alignment slightly. Hopefully it was already messed up and this is actually an improvement, but we'll see. I did it. Pulled the oil filter housing. No idea if this is actually the problem. I kept seeing oil collect here. Yet again, I made it worse. Reseated the housing and then it was just a small leak on the backside there. Oh, it's still a small leak on the backside there. So now I'm wondering if that was the leak the whole time. I don't know, but I do know I can't reef that through bolt much more without damaging things. All right, I think I got it. I hope I got it. I'm gonna stop looking now. I did top up the engine oil with this straight 30 diesel stuff I found in the trunk. Tools, check. I did run the Ling Long tires up to 38 PSI because if ever a car needed less rolling resistance, it's this one. Got the cigar lighter working. All I had to do was tighten the ground shell around it and then wiggle some things. Yeah, it's definitely sitting higher in the front now. Might have been way too much. Maybe I need to drop both bars. For glory! Or despair. Or to make sure my AAA subscription's still active. I'm very late. The good news is, it's gonna take me forever to get there. On the road again. Yeah. So this is what the next, I wanna say, hour and a half looks like. There sure is an amount of satisfaction in passing people with the slowest car on earth. Oh, the speedo said 60 for a second. Then I hit a hill. That's the highest the temperature gauge has ever read so far. Obviously it's not getting hot, it's doing fine. I am smelling some burning oil. I know that'll come as a shock. This engine's covered in it. This is the hardest and longest it's worked in a long time. You may have noticed the wheel's crooked. I did not notice that at all for the first couple days of driving this thing. It certainly needs a little bit of help in the alignment department, particularly now that the suspension height has been adjusted. I need to finalize that first. All right, now we're cruising at 60 miles an hour or so on flattish ground, and it's really not bad. Oh, we're going downhill. There is just no way this thing ever reaches 70 miles an hour. Maintaining 60 requires all the throttle, all of the time. Stop for a coffee. Can I get to highway speed by the end of the runway? No. Almost, but no. Update. Smoke. Oil smoke. Bad. I don't think it's like blocking out the highway, but it's not good. And it's coming in around the column, which I do not love. Okay, maybe we'll pull over and check some things. Hey, the good news is the left blinker indicator started working. Good Lord! Bad stuff happened. Ugh. When I popped the hood, I could see it just pouring out around this filter housing. I should have left well enough alone on that. All right, good news. I've located the problem. I thought these used a flat cork gasket, but they use an O-ring above that housing dropout thing. Bad news. Don't see any parts stores around here. Luckily, I have a phone a friend really close to here, so I'm gonna hang out and wait for him, eat my burrito, and question my life choices. The cavalry arrives. So fixed. Aside from the oil everywhere. Send me a bill. We're gonna need more of this. Poured a little bit more oil in. Didn't even lose all that much. I still have like half a quart left. On the road again. Obviously there's still some residual smell, but hopefully that goes away within the next couple minutes. If it billows more smoke through here, obviously we'll know. 56 miles an hour everywhere isn't such a bad way to travel. You really get to take in the sights, like those unused nuke towers over there, for example. I'm sure the car needed an oil change. It's just, I would have rather scheduled it, you know? This is kind of odd, but this car has no fresh air vents whatsoever. Was that an extra cost option? My 55 New Yorker had fresh air vents, and it had little foot pedals that you would actuate to open them. I fully expected to be holding everyone up in traffic, but no. Ah, the 2-lane back road. Perky is definitely happier here than out on the interstate, but the speed limit's 55 and we're still pushing it to keep up with traffic here. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Completely losing power. All the power is leaving. Why is it doing that? All right, time for another pit stop. Well, I pulled over and checked. Nothing's fallen off. Yeah, we're just like totally limited to 45 miles an hour now. And it's getting worse. Okay, so is this fuel starvation? Or is this a new governor problem? I don't know, but we're not making it to rocket like this. Okay, it's fuel supply, 100%. I was able to re-prime it with the hand pump. It took quite a bit of pumping before that happened. I just tightened up the line coming from the frame again. That could be the issue. I'm gonna check it over here on this side. Seems like a good idea. There's no fuel pouring out or anything. No, I don't think it's that. Unless there's like a hole in this line now or something. But again, the hand primer was able to pull fuel through. Yeah, it basically died totally right back there and I coasted to this spot. It would not start again, but now we're up and running. The question is this a mechanical lift pump issue or is this a supply issue? And the answer is, I don't know yet, but I'm gonna go try and drive it again. Yeah, it is not happy. It'll like go and then not go. I can feel it speeding up, slowing down, speeding up, slowing down. We've got a full tank of diesel, but I do have to wonder if maybe this is a pickup issue in the tank. It seemed to get worse going up a hill back there. There's a fuel station in, I want to say 5 or 6 miles. I could brim the tank and see if that makes a difference, but I don't know that it will. Well, now it's back up to its regular happy self. I don't know what to think. I'm just gonna keep going. I'm now closer to rocket than I am to home, so, you know, worst case, we make Tom come pick this thing up. Here we go again. So I guess I just have to pull over and hand prime it again to purge whatever air we're pulling into the fuel system out like every 5 miles or so. I did check the clamps back at the tank when it was in the air, in case you were wondering. A good cop does what with his equipment before using it in the field? They test it? They test it. We're learning some important lessons. And we're using all of my phone a friends today. My buddy Nick, the Pacific Northwest Swept-Line King, is gonna bring me some diesel. Well, at least it looks good broken. I was planning a big road trip with this car this upcoming weekend. Don't think that's gonna happen at this point. Okay, there is a small amount of seepage around the end of this hose coming from the frame line, and there's also a split, but it doesn't seem to go all the way in, so I don't think that's our issue. I may have to cut this and shorten it up in a minute. I'll just say it right now. Every chunk of rubber fuel hose on this thing needs to be replaced. Hey, the oil filter housing's dry. That's the good news. The bad news is there's totally oil dripping from the front seal timing cover area still. There's worse news back here, but I don't want to think about that right now. It's like snowing tree bits. Is that the cavalry? That might be the cavalry. Yep, Nick brought some diesel. I dumped like 2.5 gallons of it in the tank, primed it, no more air, and we're back on the road. So I'm gonna limp it into Oakville here, brim the tank, and then continue, I guess. On that last one, it wouldn't even prime or move or anything anymore, so this is a big improvement. I guess this means the fuel pickup or draw tube in that shiny new tank is bent way up above the floor. So yeah, you gotta run it brimmed. That is not ideal. Yeah, that couple gallons put the gauge right back where it was too. So all of the driving I've done, I've only used 2 to 3 gallons of fuel. He's even wearing the uniform. I owe you.
No, you do not. It's all good.
I think I do though.
It's all right.
All right.
What I'm here for.
It took another 6.5 gallons at the fuel station and blew diesel everywhere. That was fun to clean. This is what the gauge says now. Really not much higher than it was. So as it stands, 9 gallons from fully brimmed until it runs out of fuel. 9 times 3, Well, that's not bad. You can go pretty far on that as long as you keep the tank fully brimmed. I'm gonna try and fix that at some point. Anyway, here we go. Maybe we'll make it to Rocket today. I think I'm like 3 hours late right now. I'm just glad I wasn't on my way to like a court date or something. Oh, by the way, the belt is squealing again. And now for the fun curvy bit. Gee, I'm glad all the breakdowns were handled before this. There's like no shoulder, terrible service, and it's still quite a ways to walk to Rocket from here. Whee! Alright, the problem here is if I slow down much more than 40, I'm gonna have to downshift. And if I downshift, I can't go much more than 30. This car really does drive pretty nicely. It drives a lot better than you would expect for an old American boat like this. Bikists. Plugging. There we go. Finally, somewhere I can actually enjoy driving it. Don't have to be stressed about holding up traffic. Don't have to go 60 miles an hour. Don't have to contend with cars in my way. This is nice. Home stretch. Yay, we did it. How worried about this should I be? I'm still not going to worry about it, but sometime the cooling system in this thing should probably be addressed. Head gasket, cooling system flush, fresh antifreeze. Oh, and maybe a radiator that doesn't look like scrap. I mean, we lost a little bit, but that's still safe. On the road again. I did have to reset that idle spring setting because the idle had come way up. Not exactly sure what's up with that. Oh, we're massively down on power and the thing will barely accelerate again. Nice! Just kidding, I forgot to put my toe in the firewall. Everything's fine. I forgot to tighten the belt. Whew, that's a lot of the yellow allergy stuff. So pretty here. Yeah, here's a view we haven't seen for a while. Mountain. Seems like as good a spot for service as any. Okay, it's still nowhere near as loose as it was when I got the thing, but it's not great. I don't know how much more is in this. Oh, no more at all. Well, I gave it an extra little huh, and it might be better. I guess we need to go another ½ inch shorter on this belt. Well, we learned some things, I guess. We learned this fine unit is not exactly ready for the prime time. Yee-hee, doggy. It is fun to drive though, especially because you pretty much just can't slow down. Expect a car like this to be a corner carver, and it's not, but it's remarkably capable. Seriously, why is this actually fun to drive? It makes no sense. Remember that time I was on the side of the road right through here like 4 times earlier? Things are going better this time. So far. Oh boy! We found a couple extra miles an hour. Maybe the engine's getting happier. Or maybe it's going to explode. Maybe the ring seal's coming back. Maybe it likes the fresh fuel. I don't know, but it's something. I hate all of you. We've almost done it. We're not gonna do it, but we almost hit the 70 miles an hour they said the Perkins was capable of. Officially passed all of the spots I broke down today, and I'm actually on track to get home on time-ish. Still holding the speed limit going uphill and keeping up with traffic, but I'm starting to smell coolant pretty good. Come on, Perky. You can do it. Why? Yeah, aside from breaking down 4 or 5 times, the biggest issue driving this has been other people. Oh, sweet salvation. I could be crazy, but I do think it's running better. Just accelerated from a stop and it didn't feel like a glacier. Didn't feel fast, but yeah, I think this is an improvement somehow. Hello? Hello? Please turn off. Please turn off. Apparently this adjustment has gotten goofy because it came out here and it shut right off, no problem. Battery's boiling though. Kind of smells like acid. I'm gonna back away now. Oh, it's so bad. Well, it did it, so that's cool, but everything kind of hurts and is vibrating. I don't think we need to do that again. Like, maybe ever. Ugh. Yeah. Bad cold start or the worst cold start of all time? What's that liquid over there? Why was it billowing smoke from under the hood while it cranked? Ugh. This thing cold starts worse than a Ford. I do have a possible solution for that. I can't even breathe on this car without getting greasy. 1959 Perkins powered Plymouth Taxi. The official car of really cool in theory, in practice, not a car so much. I mean, you can drive it places, but maybe you shouldn't. I am glad I took this thing on the longest 50-mile road trip of my life. I now know that it's not ready for the big trip I had in mind this weekend. And that's fine. You know, we learned a lot. We worked out some bugs and found some more kind of major ones. The next thing I've got to do with this car, head gasket. That is terrible. I may well get some other gaskets and seals at the same time, although the idea of trying to keep all of the oil in this thing seems kind of pointless. The horrible blow-by, oil leakage, and crankcase pressure could well be head gasket related. It might also need rings. I'm not planning to find out anytime soon, though. Yeah, we'll just do that. Okay, I do really like this thing, though, and I'm going to continue putting miles on it here in town. No more highway trips, till we get some things figured anyway. Oh, no. Oh, apparently this is a 54 Plymouth badge. Neat, but why is it here? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Look forward to way more on the Perkins Plymouth coming soon. Until then, as ever, thanks for watching. And remember, slow and steady wins the something. Meanwhile, in Cummins land...